I never thought a quiet morning could end with 4 men in fake uniforms being hauled off my property in handcuffs. But that's exactly what happened. They came here to take my land, said the HOA had reassigned it. 8 minutes later, the sheriff was slapping cuffs on them, and the woman who sent them, she was about to lose everything. It started 3 weeks earlier on one of those mornings that felt too calm to be real. The sun was just coming up over the pines, coffee in my hand, my old Shepherd Duke sniffing around the fence. That's when I noticed it, an envelope sitting on top of my mailbox, cream-colored thick paper sealed with wax, like it came straight from a courthouse or a wedding invite. I knew it couldn't be good. The return address said, Green Hollow Community Development Authority. Around here nobody called it that, they just said, the HOA. Their fancy gate was 2 miles from my land, 40 acres of pine and pasture I'd bought specifically to stay away from people like them. So seeing that name on my mail, yeah, my stomach dropped. I tore it open right there on the porch. Inside was a letter printed on expensive stationery with a gold embossed logo. It looked official right until I actually read it. According to the letter, my property had been formally integrated into the extended jurisdiction of Green Hollow HOA. Their words, not mine. Apparently my land was now part of their visual continuity buffer, which as far as I could tell was just HOA speak for. We redrew the map and decided your land is ours now. They even itemized my violations. $3,000 for a non-conforming fence, $9,000 for landscape cohesion failure, another $7,000 for exposed agricultural equipment visible from community boundaries, total $19,400. I just stood there laughing, half in disbelief, half in rage. Whoever wrote that letter must have spent too much time in air-conditioned meetings and not enough time outside. The signature at the bottom, Margaret Delaney, President. I'd heard of her before. My realtor buddy once called her the HOA Queen of the South, said she used to run luxury developments in Florida until lawsuits chased her out. Guess she found a new kingdom here. I went inside, pulled my deed from the safe, double-checked every line. Lot number, zoning, parcel code, no HOA, no shared easement, nothing. Still, I wanted to be sure, so I called the number listed on the letter. She answered on the third ring. "This is Margaret," she said in that sugary tone people use when they're about to ruin your day. "Ma'am," I started trying to stay polite. "I just got a letter saying my property's under your HOA. I believe there's been some mistake." "No mistake," she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Your parcel now falls under the county's visual harmony overlay. You're within 2 miles of our primary gate, which means your property affects our community's aesthetic value. You'll need to comply." I blinked. "Let me get this straight. You're fining me 20 grand for having a fence and a tractor on my own land." She gave this little laugh. "We suggest consulting legal counsel familiar with cooperative zoning." And then she hung up. That's when I knew this wasn't some mix-up. It was a power play. Later that afternoon, my neighbor Ben pulled up in his beat-up Chevy. "Heard the HOA's been sniffing around your place," he said. "If they're dumb enough to mess with you, they'll probably come for me next. Need any help? Photo statements, whatever. Too friendly. Way too friendly." Ben was the kind of guy who once ignored me for a year because my cows wandered through his fence. People don't change overnight. Still, I nodded and thanked him, but something in my gut twisted. The next morning, I drove to the county planning office, a beige building that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. I slid the HOA letter under the glass and asked, "Is this real?" The clerk sighed like he'd been asked the same thing 100 times. "Technically, yeah." HOA filed a new servitude overlay based on a dormant plan from 2012. County signed off last month. "You're telling me they redrew the map and stole my land legally?" He shrugged. "Barely legal. You might want to lawyer up." By the time I got home, another envelope was nailed to my gate. Nailed, not taped. It said I had 72 hours to remove all non-compliant structures or face enforcement action. Enforcement action. Like I was a criminal. That night I checked my trail cameras. One caught a black SUV creeping by the fence. Another showed a man with a flashlight taking photos. I doubled my security settings, synced alerts to my phone, even set my drone to patrol twice a day. Next evening, Ben showed up again, this time with ribs and beer. Said he wanted to talk man to man. We sat on the porch. He asked if I was sure I hadn't signed anything years back, some clause in access right, something hidden in the fine print. His tone was too casual, too smooth. Later, when I reviewed my interior camera, I saw him linger by my office window. He hadn't touched anything, but he'd looked. That's when I built a trap. I made a folder on my desktop called Settlement Drafts. Filled it with fake documents, emails implying I was considering joining the HOA voluntarily. Bait for anyone snooping. 2 days later, my Wi-Fi log showed a new device trying to connect HOA admin console. The MAC address matched Ben's tablet. So that's how they wanted to play. A week later, I drove into town to file a formal complaint with the land commissioner. Took me 4 hours. When I came back, there was dust rising at the end of my road. 2 flatbeds and a backhoe were parked by my fence. 6 men in safety vests hammering stakes into the dirt. A sign hung from my gate. Green Hollow South Entrance, Phase 1, Beautification Project. I pulled over. You fellas know you're on private land. One guy chewing gum held up a clipboard. We got an order. Says we're cleared to start frontage enhancements, decorative fencing, irrigation prep. Lady named Margaret paid the deposit. The paperwork looked official enough, county logo, but no seal, no signature, no permit number. Just a blurry stamp that said Community Integration Initiative. You've got 60 seconds to load up and leave, I told them. Sir, we're just doing our job. So am I said, raising my phone. Smile, you're live. That morning I'd started a YouTube channel called Ranch Watch. Figured if they wanted to work in the shadows, I'd bring sunlight. Within minutes, my live stream had hundreds of viewers. I panned across the trucks, the fake paperwork, the workers now looking nervous. You are trespassing, I said into the camera. These men claim my land belongs to an HOA I never joined. By nightfall, the video had 30,000 views. Comments poured in. This guy's a legend. HOA gone rogue. I ended the stream with episode 1 complete. Something tells me there'll be more. Still that night I sat alone on the porch, Duke asleep by my boots. For the first time I felt the weight of it all. What if I couldn't win? What if they found another loophole? For a second I thought about packing up, selling the land, starting over somewhere quieter. Then Duke lifted his head, looked at me like he knew what I was thinking. And I remembered this wasn't just dirt and trees. This was home. I'd fought harder battles in my life. I wasn't about to let a paper tyrant take this one, so I decided to fight. 2 mornings later, I woke to motion alerts. 2 black SUVs were crawling up my driveway. No plates. 4 men stepped out, all wearing gray polos with Green Hollow Enforcement Division printed on them. I almost laughed. I walked out onto the porch, shotgun in hand, Duke at my heel. Morning, gentlemen, I said. You're not here to deliver packages, I assume. Clipboard guy stepped forward. Mr. Lane, he said, under Section 47 of the Green Hollow Covenant Charter, your property has been temporarily reassigned to HOA management. You're instructed to vacate within the hour. I stared at him. You're out of your damn mind. This is private land. He kept talking, reciting some memorized garbage about penalties and seizure. One of his buddies cracked a taser for effect. Duke growled low. I didn't point the shotgun, I just let the sunlight catch the barrel. Then, calm as a preacher, I reached to my belt and hit the panic button. It pinged the sheriff's office directly. My phone, already on the porch rail, was live streaming to thousands. Welcome back to Ranch Watch, I said. We've got 4 armed men on my property claiming HOA authority. Let's see what happens. Clipboard guy noticed the red light on the camera and started to panic. You can't film this, he said. Actually, I replied, I can. Smile for the audience. He reached toward the phone, so I fired 1 shell straight into the air. The blast cracked through the pines like thunder. Everyone froze. 8 minutes later, the sirens came. 2 cruisers, 1 K9 unit. Sheriff Hank Braddock stepped out, the same Hank I'd served with back in the Marines. Hank, I said, these clowns showed up claiming to own my house. He looked around, picked up Clipboard guy's fake badge and squinted. You printed this at Staples. Clipboard guy sputtered, but Hank was already cuffing him. One of the others bolted into the woods, didn't make it 10 yards before the dog tackled him. By noon, all 4 were in custody. My live stream hit 60,000 views before sunset. People were calling me the guy who fought the HOA army. The next morning, Hank called me. "You'll like this," he said. "None of those guys were licensed. 2 have priors. And guess who paid them cash?" I didn't even have to guess. "Margaret," I said. "Bingo," Hank replied. And we found a forged court order in their truck. Looked official till we saw the county seal was copy-pasted from Google. That night I made another video. How to spot a fake enforcement officer. Deadpan voice, screenshots, sarcasm. By morning I had 200,000 subscribers. That's when Margaret snapped. She posted a public HOA bulletin calling me a dangerous extremist and accused me of threatening peaceful compliance officers. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. But then something shifted. 2 neighbors I barely knew showed up. One of them, a retired Air Force colonel, handed me an envelope. "You need to see this," he said. Inside were copies of internal HOA emails. Margaret had revived an expired development permit, falsified county documents, even gave her little project a code name, Project Southgate. In one email, she called me a temporary occupant standing in the way of long-term prestige goals. I sent everything to Sheriff Hank. Within 24 hours, his deputies raided the HOA office. The news broke that night. Green Hollow HOA president under investigation for fraud. Margaret tried to play innocent, released a statement about unfortunate misunderstandings, but her signature was on every fake document. A few weeks later, we faced each other in court. She walked in wearing pearls and a cream blazer, smiling like she was at a charity brunch. But when the prosecutors started listing charges, fraud, forgery, conspiracy, impersonation, that smile cracked. Her hired enforcers turned on her instantly. One cried on the stand, another blamed bad directions. Even Ben tried to save his own skin, claiming she'd manipulated him, that he'd only trespassed because she told him I was dangerous. The judge didn't buy a word of it. Then came the final blow. The county registrar testified that every permit she used had expired a decade ago. The maps she'd filed were completely fabricated. By the time the judge denied her bail, Margaret looked like her whole little empire had turned to dust. When the bailiff cuffed her, she hissed at me, "You don't deserve that land." I didn't say a word. 3 months later, the verdict came down. Margaret got 14 years in prison. Her enforcers got 6 each. Ben, 1 year probation and a public apology. The court awarded me $275,000 in damages and, more importantly, declared my land permanently exempt from all HOA jurisdiction. Green Hollow dissolved within a month. Turns out I wasn't their only target. They'd tried the same stunt with 4 other landowners. My case opened the floodgates. A while later, I drove past the old gate. Someone had hung a handmade sign over the street marker. It read, "Shotgun Ridge Road, where queens fear to tread." I laughed, took it down out of respect, but someone kept putting it back every week. Guess the legend stuck. Sometimes I still sit on that porch with Duke, watching the sunrise hit the pines, coffee in hand. And every so often, when the air gets too still, I swear I can hear Margaret's voice again, sweet as Splenda, telling me what I can and can't do on my land. That's when I smile, take a slow sip, and whisper to the wind, "Not now, not ever." Lesson learned. When someone tries to take what's yours, don't just fight back. Expose them. Because sunlight is the one thing bullies can't survive.